Hi guys, welcome back to the channel, or hello if it's your first time. Today I'm going to be talking about all the ways that you can practice self-care as a counselor and psychotherapist. It's easier said than done. I know I'm guilty of it myself, so this video is not just for you, it's also for me. So let's get into it. One way is by saying no often, and saying no when it's necessary, especially because a lot of people who become counselors and therapists tend to be people who have a rescuer mentality or a rescuer personality, and sometimes this is referred to as like the wounded healer. So we tend to have the characteristics of somebody who tends to rescue people a lot, or who's a healer for a lot of people. Even though we're wounded ourselves, we'll always look to help and heal other people. So it can be really hard sometimes to say no to clients. It can be hard to say no to family members and friends, especially when they come to us for help. Knowing the career that we're in, it's easy for us to just be like, yeah, I'm supposed to be a helpful person. My career is all about helping other people, so how can I say no to my friends, my family? And to be honest, it's a very comfortable role. Like, let's not lie, it's very comfortable to be the person that, like, you do everything for everybody, you're needed by everyone. It's nice to be needed, and it's easy to just say yes because most of the time you are capable. Saying no doesn't mean you're not capable, but it shows self-care, because saying yes to everybody and everything can end up having a detrimental impact on your mental health sometimes, and your physical health, depending on what you're saying yes to. So the first step in being able to say no is first being able to admit that this is the kind of person that you are, and that you find it difficult to say no. Second step is to now be aware of it when you're doing, and to be able to check yourself and say, actually, the next time somebody asks me, can I do this, can I do that, just don't have to respond straight away. Give yourself time to think about it, whether that's 5 minutes or 5 months. Think about it. Don't rush the decision unless you really have to, but take your time. Don't assume that people are not going to know what to do if you say no. Don't assume that people are not going to have any other option if you say no. Don't assume that you are the life and death of that situation. If they came to you, they can go to somebody else. I know this is easier said than done, so if you're still going to find it very difficult to say no, I recommend at least redirecting people to somewhere where they can get the help that they need, rather than taking it all on for yourself, because that's something I'm guilty of doing. So at least maybe if somebody comes to you for help about something, instead of taking all on your shoulders, maybe redirect them and take them to somewhere where they can get the help that they need. And that way you still help them without having put so much pressure on yourself to be the rescuer and to be the one to solve the situation. So this leads me nicely onto my next point. Point 2, practice what you teach your clients. Oftentimes we tell our clients to look after themselves, to take care of themselves. We tell them all these ways that they should practice self-care, but oftentimes we don't actually take that advice ourselves. Like, we can sit with our clients and be like, this is how you can try this, and you can try this, and you can do this, and maybe consider this. We don't actually sometimes take the time to do those things for ourselves. And in a way that kind of makes us hypocrites sometimes, although it might not be intentional. And I remember this really funny story that I heard, that there must have been a client who was out and about, and she saw her therapist in public with her boyfriend, and the therapist was shouting and cussing at her boyfriend in public, like out loud enough for people who were around to watch and hear and witness everything. And so as the client was standing there witnessing this, she was so confused. And when they next had their session, the client addressed the therapist and said, like, well, how come you arguing with your boyfriend? Like, why don't you apply the things you tell me about communication to your own relationship? Because it doesn't look like you were applying any of the communication stuff you taught me in your relationship, because you were shouting and cussing your boyfriend in public. And it just goes to show that, like, if we take our own advice, we're going to be a lot better off. And our advice and our techniques and the things that we use for our clients shouldn't be just for our clients, but we should also practice what we preach. If you're telling your clients that they should sleep more or have less screen time, are you doing that as well? But on the other hand, instead of following that advice, you're only having maybe 4 or 5 hours of sleep and then surviving on caffeine for the whole day in order to be able to get through your day. Like, let's listen to ourselves as well. Point number 3 is socializing, allowing other people to pour into us. Because let's face it, our career is very, very lonely. Our industry is an industry where you're alone most of the time. You're not sharing an office, you're not sharing a desk, you're not sharing a room with other therapists most of the time. It's just you, your client, your paperwork, and repeat and repeat and repeat, and whatever else, like, and supervision sometimes, but most of it is always in a one-to-one situation with people that you're meeting in a professional capacity. Even on your break, you might not necessarily have the time to socialize with your co-workers, maybe because when you're on your break they have a client, and even then it's not guaranteed that you will get on and you will have the same schedule, because this career is also very flexible. So when you're spending all these hours pouring into other people, spending time with other people, giving them stuff, giving them advice, we're always giving them something, and we're always giving. Who is pouring into us? Who is pouring into you? So it's important that you make the time to socialize and have people around you that can pour into you, that can edify you, that can add something to you. And it's not a situation where you're the one who's having to constantly give everything that they have on an emotional level, psychological level, mental level, physical level. Like, be around people, friends, family, whoever, partners that can actually make you feel like you're being poured into and you're being revitalized and energized. So this includes setting a lot of boundaries around, don't spend time with people who, let's say for example, that friend that's always talking about her toxic relationship. Don't spend time talking about that one person who's always going to complain about work. Be around people that are not going to be constantly draining you because all they want to do is vent and talk about themselves. Be around people that are actually going to take interest in you and care about you and be interested in you. Of course, I'm not saying that all your relationships should be one-sided. I'm saying that when you notice that you're spending a lot of time working, make sure that at least in your circle you have people who are able to pour into you at times. So take note of how you feel after you've spent time with certain people. You can't have a work life where you're constantly giving and a social life where you're constantly giving. There has to be a balance. Next up, we have supervision. Yes, I know supervision is mandatory, but it's also self-care. Supervision is the place for you as a therapist and counselor to vent or to speak about your client work and to strategize about how to move forward in your client work. So in this case, this is not only an ethical and mandatory thing to do whenever you have clients, but it's also self-care, because you don't get to talk about your client work anywhere else in that capacity. So in supervision, you get to let it all out. You get to speak about your clients explicitly, and you get to say as much as you want about how they're making you feel, how the work is impacting you, what you're going to do, what you're planning on doing, should you leave the client, should you refer them. You get to talk about all of these things in a filter-free environment where the other person fully and completely understands. And this is important, especially if you have clients who are particularly draining, or clients where you feel a lot of counter-transference, or a client where there's maybe erotic transference and it's just a very difficult client to handle for whatever reason. It's important that you go to supervision to be able to manage this in a healthy way. I know it's expensive, but you have to do it regardless. Next up, we have staying active. Yes, most of us as therapists, we spend most of our days sitting, talking to clients. We're sitting, unless maybe you're doing like nature therapy or something like that, CBT of some sort, where you have to be out, immersive therapy. But majority of therapy is you're going to be sitting down, whether that's online or face-to-face. You're not moving much for hours on end. And even when you have your lunch break, you're probably sitting down. It's a lot of sitting, okay? So try and move around, try and take a walk, try and go for a run. Outside of work, try and stay as active as possible. I know it's probably nice after a long day of work to come home, sit down, watch TV or read a book, but try and take the time to move around and do something active, just so that you can keep your muscles active, you can keep your muscles alive and alert, because the more you sit down and the more that you don't move around, the more sore your body will feel when you eventually try to move around, and it ages you a lot quicker, to be honest. And I know some of you probably don't know this, but I'm a qualified personal trainer as well, so I know what I'm talking about, okay? Move your body, so make an active effort to move around and get your steps in. Next up, take a vacation. You really need to take a holiday at some point. It's important to take a holiday, but it's also okay to take a holiday, because I think some of us feel like, oh, I can't take a holiday, my client needs me. What am I gonna do? What's my client gonna do if I'm gone for 2 weeks? What's my client gonna do if I'm gone for 3 weeks? It's okay. You are not your client's lifeline, and you shouldn't be. And I know some clients might treat you like you're their lifeline, but you're not. They've lived this long without you, and they can live without you for a few weeks. And of course, some circumstances are going to be a bit different, but in those situations, I think a referral might be best. but you can also figure out how to manage that kind of situation with your supervisor. But if you're finding it hard to take holidays, maybe if you're able to move your clients online for the week or two that you're going to be on holiday, and just have online sessions with them, and just be like, temporarily while I'm on holiday, we can just move our sessions online. You can get used to having a break, although it's not really a break in my opinion, but at least it's better than nothing. You're still able to travel and you're still able to enjoy it. But if you can avoid having online clients while you're on holiday, please do, simply because imagine you have a really heavy session with a client, and then you like wanted to go to the beach, or you wanted to go somewhere, but then in the session your client was crying, and even then you feel emotionally drained after that session. How are you going to enjoy the rest of your day? Like, just don't do it to yourself, okay? If you really can avoid it, don't do it to yourself. So, cancel ahead of time, reschedule if you have to. Like, I know our clients really like the idea of having a week, like every week they're gonna see us, but in all honesty, set your boundaries and stick to them. Like, let your clients know when you're starting and when you're contracting that, yeah, you're gonna take holidays, or you're gonna do this and you're gonna do that, just so that they're not shocked when the time comes. Sometimes clients might really look forward to seeing you because they get to vent to you and tell you about their week or whatever happened, and they're like, but in all honesty, they can't live without you. I remember in supervision, this conversation came up, and we were talking about the Christmas holiday and taking a break, and I had said, oh, I've already emailed my clients like a month in advance to tell them and to ask them, like, do they want to cancel or reschedule. My supervisor asked me, like, why did you offer them the option to cancel or reschedule? I think that's what he said. Like, why didn't you just tell them that, like, you want a holiday, like, you deserve a holiday? And I was just like, oh, I was a bit hesitant to just be like, cancel. And he was like, yeah, like, you can take a break. And somebody else in the supervision group wasn't sure if we were even allowed to work on Christmas or not, or if we have to work on Christmas. And it's just like something you just learn, that you can take breaks and it's okay to take breaks. The same way that your client can go on holiday, you can go on holiday too. So do it. That is self-care. The next one is setting boundaries with clients. We know why we need to set boundaries with everyone in our lives, not just our friends and families, but with the clients especially. Don't be a therapist to your friends and to your family. Don't do that. When you're around them, let them know that, yes, I know I'm a therapist, I know I'm a counsellor, but that doesn't mean that I'm here to just advise and guide everybody through every single issue that they have. You can use your therapeutic skills to talk to them, to advise them and to guide them in certain things, but do not sit there and be their counsellor. If they really, really need to talk to someone, the best thing you can do is simply recommend a counsellor that they can see, or a few therapists that you know that you can recommend to them. But more so than this, it's really important to set boundaries with your clients. I personally haven't experienced a client that I've had to set firm boundaries with, because most of the time it's been quite simple and straightforward, and I haven't had a client that's crossed like boundaries in a way that's made me concerned or worried. But it probably will happen at some point. But some things to consider is like making sure that clients are not texting you, calling or emailing you outside of your contact hours. Emailing, maybe that's fine, but calling and texting, especially if they've got like your work number or your private number for whatever reason, then just making sure that they don't contact you outside of certain hours. And even then, if they do contact you outside of those hours, that they understand that you are not going to pick up, and if you've said you're not going to pick up, for sure don't pick up. Should they need a crisis helpline or anything like that, they would already have those numbers and you would have already given them those numbers. Some clients might feel like, oh, they just want to talk to you just because they're lonely. So also make sure that they're not calling you or texting you because they're lonely, and that they're actually calling and texting you for things that are specific to the therapy. Maybe they're calling you to ask about the homework, or maybe they need guidance on the homework, or they need to reschedule or cancel a session. Like, in those circumstances, that's absolutely fine. But if conversation goes beyond that, then you need to reaffirm those boundaries. Also, if you work within your house, so you see clients within your house or in somewhere that's personal to you, making sure that they understand that they can't come to your house, especially after you've completed your sessions together and they're no longer a client, that they can't just stop by your house. And maybe to be able to have a certain security system. Some people might be a bit crazy, and some people might think there's absolutely nothing wrong with just turning up at your door and being like, hey, it's been a while, how you doing? And it's like, no, you can't do that. But overall, set boundaries. Don't feel guilty about not always being there for your client. They can live without you, okay? Next up, another big form of self-care is not taking on too many clients. I know sometimes it might seem like, oh, I really need the money, or I really need the money, so I'm going to take on like 6 clients a day, 5 days a week, 7 days a week, how many ever it might be. Know your limits and stick to those limits. Now, I don't know if there is a specific limit in terms of how many clients a counselor can see in a week or in a day. I don't know if there's a limit, but I'm sure there probably is. but it's also up to you to notice and monitor how many clients you can handle without feeling too stressed or without feeling overwhelmed, and stick to those limits, and don't let the money be the reason that you take on more clients. Know your threshold and stick to it. That is a form of self-care. Next up, try not to think about your clients too much. This is definitely easier said than done. I have clients that I still think about to this day, because I'm just like, oh, I really hope things went okay with you. I really hope that you got the help you need. I really hope that you're better now. Like, I still think about some clients that ended abruptly and we never got a chance to end properly, and we never got a chance to say goodbye. And it's gonna happen. There might be clients like that who come and then they just disappear without saying a word. And you might think about those clients, but when I'm saying don't think about clients too much, I'm saying don't let your whole day be consumed by worry for a certain client. Don't let your time and energy be so consumed by, is this client okay? I wonder how they're doing. I really can't wait to see them. Okay, maybe I should have 2 sessions a week instead of 1, so that I can keep my eye on them. And getting so worked up over a client to the point where you are basically watching over them as much as you can, and basically breaking boundaries so you can be more involved in their life and more involved in caring for them. If you find that you are getting to a level of concern where you're constantly thinking about your client, it's affecting your appetite, your sleep, whatever it might be, take it to your supervisor. Similar to this, you might dream about your clients and your clients might dream about you. This is not particularly anything of concern. It might happen, but if it does happen regularly, or the dreams are something that are kind of worrying you, then yes, you might want to take it to your supervisor. But to dream about your clients once in a while and it's not anything that seems concerning to you, then that's probably quite normal. Next up, I have therapy. Going to therapy as a therapist is self-care, because sometimes life happens, and when life happens, you can sometimes need a shoulder to lean on. Just because you're a therapist doesn't mean that you can't go and see a therapist or a counselor yourself. So things can happen. You might be going through the loss of a loved one, and it might not be possible to talk to your family, or you might not be able to talk to people around you, so going to a therapist might be an option. And it's not weird at all, because even now as I'm training, I have to see a therapist, and once I'm done, I'm probably going to stop for a while. But should anything happen in my life that requires me to see a therapist, I will most definitely go see a therapist. It's just like saying, just because you're a doctor doesn't mean you can't go to see a doctor. Like, you're still going to need to see a doctor, because you're still human and you're probably still going to get ill at some point. Your supervisor is going to be different to your therapist, so you can have both a supervisor and a therapist. That is self-care. Last but not least, read books for fun. Because I think a lot of times, sometimes we might read books just about client work, reading about the latest things in the industry, reading subscription magazines, so on and so forth. But once in a while, just read a book for fun. Just read something interesting. Just read something that you love, whether it's fiction, non-fiction, but just as long as it's not related to work, it's not related to the industry. Because at this moment in time, I'm not gonna lie, I'm very guilty of reading only books around client work or certain conditions so I can understand my clients. It's all basically related to work. Like, everything on my reading list, on my Christmas wish list last year was all about books that would help me in my client work. So that's not very helpful. So I do intend to go back to reading my novels, just so I can have time where my mind is switched off and I'm not necessarily thinking on something particular, and I'm not taking on extra knowledge, and I'm not actively working to learn something new. I'm just reading for fun, just so I can wind down and I can just be in a place where I'm enjoying, and I'm not doing something that's mentally draining. My brain is just being hyped up with dopamine because I'm reading a book I love. So do that for yourself. That is self-care. But if you're interested in some books for therapy, I do have a video on that which you can watch next, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.